Welcome to WaveTalkers Live. This is episode number 87. Today, we are talking about after action reports and dealing with data that's collected during exercises or incidents. My name is Chris Mattia. My amateur radio call sign is Whiskey 6 Alpha Hotel. I'm joined today on WaveTalkers Live with Dan, NR6V, and David, W0DHG. And let's go ahead and get right into today's topic because we have a lot of things to cover. Let me pull the guys down here real quick and we will jump right into it. If you have access to WinLink, please send us a WinLink check-in. Use the standard WinLink check-in form. Send it to all three of our call signs. They are W0DHG, NR6V, W6AH, and our tactical address, WaveTalkers. In the comments section, let us know what is one strength, weakness, opportunity, and threat based on your ShakeOut experience that you had with your exercise. And this is typically called a SWOT analysis. And we're going to go into that a little bit more in today's episode. But for now, let's quickly jump over into the PC and walk through the setup of sending in a WinLink check-in. Now, what you need to do is make sure that you've got your copy of WinLink open. You're going to go up here to the menu bar, click on the little new message icon, and then up in the top, you're going to click on Select Template. That should open up your template manager. The current version of the templates is 1.0.245.0. If your version shows a different number there, go ahead and quit WinLink altogether. Launch it again. When it asks you to update, go ahead and do the update. And then when it asks you to update your forms, go ahead and update your forms. Once you've got the correct version, you're going to click the little plus sign next to standard templates, and you're going to come down here to the general forms section. Click the little plus next to that. Down near the bottom, you should find WinLink check-in.txt. That's the current version of the WinLink check-in form. When you give that a double click, if the demo gods are with you, it should open up in your web browser of choice. Filling out this form is pretty straightforward. You can hit the setup button here at the top, and when you do, it'll ask you what your agency or group is. You can go ahead and fill that in and hit OK, and it will fill in this top section here. That's going to note on the form itself what your agency is. Mine is currently set to Ventura County ACS ARES check-in. A little bit below that, you're going to find the date and time field. Go ahead and give that a click. It should pop up a little pop-up menu for you, and it should set the current date and time according to your computer. This is really important to make sure that your form gets submitted with the correct date and time. Go ahead and hit OK if you need to. Then you're going to go ahead and down here in the to field, this is where you're going to fill in all of our call signs. So you can just take whatever's in there and start filling in our call signs, which are W6AH, W0DHG, NR6V, and our tactical address, WaveTalkers. Notice that each of these fields here or each of these data points are separated by a semicolon. In the from field, this is where we're going to put your call sign. Your station contact name is your name. Initial operators could be any additional call signs of any additional operators that you have sitting there watching us, whether it be live here with our live audience here inside of the Zoom, or on WaveTalkers, or our YouTube channel or Facebook. Just let us know who's sitting there watching with you. Here in the session type, let us know this is going to be an exercise. Let us know the service that you're sending this on, whether it be amateur radio or the Shares network. Then let us know what band you're sending it in. If you're sending it via internet, use the telnet option. For session type, let us know what session type you're actually sending it in. A lot of people send them in via VARA HF, VARA FM, Mesh, Packet, Pactor, a variety of different options. Here's a location section. Let us know where you are checking in from. Your latitude and longitude should be automatically filled in for you by the center of your grid square, or if you have access to a GPS plugged into your computer, it should automatically fill that in for you. Down here in the comment section, this is where you want to let us know what a strength, weakness, opportunity, and threat based on your experiences with ShakeOut 2023 were. Go ahead and when you finish filling that out, hit the submit button. After a few little pop-up menus, you should end up with a blank browser window. When you see that blank browser window, just close the window. All of those data should be populated here inside of your message. Go ahead and hit the post to outbox button and then come up here to the session. Make sure that your correct session type is set. Hit the open session button and start in order to transmit your message to us. It looks like we have check-ins that are coming in from around the world. So we'll download those, and later in the show, we'll check back here to see where everyone is checking in from, and we'll map all of those responses. I'm going to go ahead and close this, and let's jump back over into the computer, and we're going to dive into today's topic, which is after-action reports and dealing with data. Now, as we walk through today's episode, we're going to be talking about the ShakeOut 2023 after action items, and all of this is from a WaveTalkers perspective. This is just the perspective of our side of what we did with the exercise. So we're not going to talk overall about what the USGS thought of this or what all the different agencies thought of this. We're just going to go into some of our lessons learned that we gleaned from the exercise, the portion of the exercise that we ran and that we participated in. So hopefully that will give you some insights into how you can better update your next year's ShakeOut, as well as any other exercises or activations you may have. So in order to get into doing an after action report, I like to think of doing these in terms of doing a SWOT analysis. Now you might be thinking, hey, what the heck is a SWOT analysis? Well, it's where you go in and you identify the strengths, the weaknesses, any opportunities, and any threats to your particular organization, your structure, whatever you happen to go through to be able to do this. You put all this information down, and you use this as a data-driven decision-making tool for the next time you go to host an exercise or you go to host an activity with your group. So as you start going through any of the after-action reports that you generate with your team, make sure that you're walking through a process like this where you're asking people to identify a strength and go around and go around the room and ask everybody what their strengths were. Matter of fact, if you're here inside of the Zoom, or if you're watching us live on YouTube, or even time shifted on YouTube, go ahead and enter into the chat what one of the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats that you experienced if you participated in ShakeOut 2023 are. So we're going to talk about the results. And this is kind of the first thing to really kind of dive into. Before we even start trying to analyze what everything was, let's talk about what the actual results were from this year. And that really, it really does start with a lot of the strengths. There were over 1,500 WinLink DYFI reports that were delivered via amateur radio, via shares, via other communication forms, all through WinLink, delivered to the USGS. That is absolutely an incredible response for what we saw for this year's ShakeOut. Now, it really speaks to the level of engagement that we had with our operators within the overall MCOM community, with all the different teams that participated, all of the different agencies that participated, not just in the US, but across the globe. And you're going to see that in here just a few minutes. The next strength that this really points to is the level of training that has gone in to all of these operators so that they were able to successfully submit a DYFI report via WinLink. Now, keep in mind, this over 1,500 reports, this does not include all of the reports that went into the USGS. There were other means for the public, for other different businesses' activities to go in. we're just talking about WinLink here and the reports that came in. And so the training that both we've done here on WaveTalkers, as well as within your own local organizations that you've done with all of your operators, it's a real testament to seeing how effective we were at being able to collect ground-proofing data and deliver it to an agency. It really talks to the resiliency of the overall WinLink system as well, and amateur radio in general, where all of us as operators were able to submit these reports, get them transmitted, get them delivered in a timely manner, and provide real, actual ground-proofing data and information that could be used. That's real actionable information that can be used by the agency having jurisdiction, in this case, the USGS. It also talks to the interoperability of the overall system, because as I've mentioned, amateur radio operators, that made up the bulk of the operators who were submitting many of these reports. However, operators on shares, operators on other different services around the world were able to use the one WinLink system in order to submit their reports to get them all in and have them delivered. It is a really remarkable system, and it really speaks to the strengths of what we've all been building for so many years now. So let's take a look at some of these results here. This is the global map. It's not actually the final map. I put these together towards the end of the day, but it wasn't quite at the full end of the day. So as I click through these, if you notice, hey, you know what, I sent in a DYFI report and I don't see my pin on the map, it could be that you sent it in kind of just at the later portions after I had already pulled some of these data. But here's an overall view of the globe. Now, keep in mind, again, these are just reports that were submitted via WinLink. This is not counting all of the web-based DYFI reports or any other means that were out there. These are all radio operators sending in DYFI reports to the USGS using WinLink. So let's start with a little more detailed view. We'll start here in the southeastern hemisphere here. We've got reports coming in from New Zealand, from Australia, the Philippines, and some reports that were coming in off of the Adriatic Arabian Sea that are over here. And we've gone through and we've checked a lot of these, and they actually really did come from these locations. It's really pretty remarkable. Next, we're going to roll up here to Europe. And Europe had a variety of operators that submitted reports across Europe. We see quite a few that are in Austria, quite a few in the Netherlands. It looks like rolling in Germany, report coming in from Switzerland, a few from France, and several coming in from Norway. As you start looking at some of these reports, there's also a one in Italy and down here in Spain. But as you start looking at some of these reports, start to notice the clustering where the reports are coming in from, because oftentimes the tighter clusters that you're seeing here are oftentimes indicative of local MCOM organizations where they've been doing work with their operators, doing training with their operators to get them on board, share what was going on with this exercise, and really get them involved. And I think as you go through a lot of these screens, you'll really start to see that you can really pick out the clusters of the organizations that were participating. It's really impressive to see. Let's jump down here now to Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands. We had a variety of operators that sent in DYFI reports via WinLink from these different locations. We'll next jump up to the United States. This is the continental United States. And wow, I mean, there was a ton of participation all across the U.S. We had nearly every single state represented in the data. Matter of fact, I only counted 3 states that did not have any reports that came in from those states, but for the vast majority, I mean, it's scattered everywhere. And I know it's a little hard to take all of this in. So I want to dive into a few of the areas and look at them in a little more detail. Let's start. Before we go into those detail areas, let's talk about Hawaii. Hawaii, as we move across the U.S., Hawaii had a variety of these DYFI reports that were all sent in as well across most of the islands that are out there. Again, these are folks who have just been dealing with some really serious MCOM issues, and they jumped in and used the DYFI system, used the WinLink system to submit in their DYFI reports. Okay, so now we're going to dive into a couple of tighter areas within the U.S. So here we'll kind of start to zoom in on the Northeast of the United States, and you can really see the clustering that was that's visible here in Fort Worth, here in the Atlanta area, Nashville area, up here near Chicago, Detroit. Now, granted, a lot of these are near urban centers, but you can also see clusters around areas that are not right down in the city, where it's just larger organizations of WinLink operators, of MCOM teams. These may be OxCom teams, they might be ARES, they might be RACES teams, ACS teams, and they really got their operators all involved. Let's drill in a little closer here to the Northeast so you're able to see in a little more detail and hopefully be able to pick out, if you were in some of these areas, to be able to see your PIN, to see your check-in, that it was actually received. And all of these check-ins went through the WinLink system, and they were all delivered to the USGS. Let's come over here to the Great Lakes area. You can see in a little more detail, again, those clusters that you're seeing right around the cities and other different areas where you've got clearly a little MCOM, an MCOM team right here inside of this area. Another one here out in Minnesota, Indianapolis, Dayton. I mean, it's just all over the U.S. Youngtown, your group that's showing up in there, Buffalo, Pittsburgh, all these different areas. Let's come down here to the Southeast a little bit. Again, just a large number of participation that went into this exercise across all of these states, in all of these areas. Let me drill in just a little bit tighter here into the Southeast, where we've got South Carolina, North Carolina, Georgia, Maryland, Virginia, Tennessee, all of these areas where the operators really just submitted their reports. It was really fun to be able to watch throughout the day, as I was constantly checking to see these and seeing each time zone as it rolled over that 1019 to 1020 time period. And there would be just this new flood of reports that were coming in as each time zone hit their shakeout time. It's really, really exciting to be able to see that. We'll roll over into the Houston, San Antonio, Dallas area. So you can see the different groups that are there in Texas that participated. You can really see both the individual operators and, again, all of the groups that were really into sending in their DYFI reports and participating in the shakeout exercise. Let's move over here to the Southwest, where you can pick up a lot of the stations that are here in Albuquerque, Arizona, Southern Nevada, up in the Utah, Salt Lake City area, Colorado. You can even pick up here Kansas City, Oklahoma, all of these different areas as well, where you had these high concentrations of operators. These are really clearly indicative of the various different teams that were participating. We'll come down here to Southern California. We have almost continuous participation, literally from the U.S.-Mexico border down near San Diego, all the way up near my hometown here in Ventura, the Los Angeles area, Ventura County, Long Beach, Huntington Beach, all over San Diego and Southern California. Lots of participation out here for this year's shakeout. A couple of operators out here in the Big Bear Lake area and Lake Los Angeles as well. Let's come up here to the San Francisco Bay Area. You've got a grouping of operators here around San Francisco, another cluster around Sacramento, Modesto. Here you can see Carson City on the western edge of Nevada. Those stations that were participating out there. A lot of participation that went into these areas. Here in the upper Pacific Northwest, you can start to see some of these other clusters a little bit tighter. Here's a little bit better view of the group up in the Salt Lake City area. And here's a group out here in Minneapolis that were participating, Idaho Falls, a group that's up here in the northern Idaho and eastern Washington area. The groups here in the Portland area and up here in Washington, in the Seattle area. Let me drill into that area, because here in the Seattle area, you can really see there were a whole lot of operators that jumped in, participated in this. A very large collection concentration really speaks to the training, the engagement that all of these teams have put into these areas. So hopefully this gives folks a pretty good idea of who was able to participate and where they were able to participate from in this year's shakeout. And again, this is just sending in the DYFI reports through WinLink. It is not counting all of the other reports that went in through all of the other different means that were out there. So as we take a step back now, let's dive back into our SWOT analysis, and let's talk a little bit about some of the weaknesses of what got identified as we worked through analyzing the data that came in. And the first one that kind of jumped out to me was this group right in here. Now, I went through and I looked at every single one of these pins to look and see, did we actually get participation from stations across East Asia? And in fact, we did not. Not a single one of these reports has a call sign that is associated with this area. And when you kind of dive into it, you find out that these are all US stations that are in here. Now, are they just traveling? More than likely, no. More than likely, these are all stations that simply have an incorrect GPS coordinate reported. And it's a simple having a negative sign in front of one of the GPS coordinates. And in the latest version of the template, this has been mitigated. There is actually a little check that takes place when you go to submit your report. If it detects that your IP address is coming or your location is coming from, say, the Western Hemisphere, and your GPS coordinates are linked to the Eastern Hemisphere, all of a sudden you're like, hey, do you really know, is this really where you're at? It gives you just a little check so you can say, oh, you know what, let me correct that. So as far as a thing that needs to be updated, these users need to make sure they're updating. And this is not just for these users. This is for all users across the board. I think David will talk a little bit about the percentage of users. And this is absolutely incredible. The percentage of users who did have the latest version of the WinLink forms. It was astronomical. I mean, it was a huge amount. We would always love to see more users to be able to be on the latest version so that all of their data is fully compatible. So that kind of leads into another one of the weaknesses. And this is not necessarily a weakness of WinLink or of the overall system. This is just an overall challenge, and that is data consistency. This is 100% a challenge anytime you're collecting large amounts of data from the field, because field data is oftentimes quite messy. It is going to have inconsistencies in the rate as which it's being collected, the quality at which it's being collected, and how it is being delivered. So as a very simple example, write in all of the instructions across the board. This was pushed out pretty widely. The exercise ID for ShakeOut 2023 was supposed to be 2023 ShakeOut. It was the very first line in every single set of the instructions that did go out. However, what we found when we analyzed the data was this is a subset of the exercise IDs that got reported. Now, some of these are quite simply typos. Others are completely incorrect. They kind of go off in a different direction, as you can see. Not calling any individual or group out for what got shared here. It was much more about making sure that you have a consistent message that's going out across the board. And I think David's going to talk a little bit more about this when he goes into some of the data analysis that he's been doing as well. But it really is all about consistent messaging, and as consistently as possible that you can do. And this really does drive home that it needs to be a coordinated, responsible leadership role that really takes up the standard here and carries it forward. And if you're in a leadership role within your organization, making sure that you follow through as well on that consistent messaging as much as possible. I like to think of this a lot as cat herding challenges, because when you start thinking about all of the different groups that we have participating in ShakeOut 2023, and you see the impact that we had on a global scale, coordinating all of those different organizations, individuals, is a real challenge. And it really is up to the individual in each organization to be able to provide that solid leadership. Now, as a leadership example and a mitigation strategy, I'd like to walk through this very brief example. And the first one is that the agency having jurisdiction for the shakeout exercise is the USGS. They're the ones who are charged with collecting all of these types of data and putting out the report. It all belongs to them. So every single message, if you send in a DYFI through WinLink, every single message goes directly to the USGS. So we consider them taken care of at this point. So now the next question becomes, okay, who do we CC? Who do we send in additional copies of the report? And we want to encourage folks to focus on the larger picture here. So as an example, a couple of weeks ago, when we did our WaveTalkers special, we told everybody, CC WaveTalkers as you do your exercise, because we really want to see what the data is, and we want to show that we're participating. And WaveTalkers actually registers with ShakeOut as a participating organization. And so for all of you who watch our show, we thank you very much for watching the show, for engaging with us, and for participating. But as we got a little bit closer to the event, we got contacted by the WinLink development team, and they said, hey, you know what? We're going to push out this Quake 23 call CC address. We really want everybody to be able to send that in as well. And we're like, okay, sure, no problem. You can have as many CCs as you would like. And we even talked about this in our show a couple of weeks ago. But then as we got even closer to the event, suddenly we saw the newsletter that came out from FEMA, and FEMA was promoting the Quake 23 address as that is the address that everybody should be sending it to. So at which point we simply dropped it. We just let it go, and we allowed any traffic that was coming in, especially if you watched our live show, to walk through, and we only pushed one thing. Now, why would we do that? Wouldn't it be great for us to be able to get that data and get that information? Well, the real key is when you have as many operators sending in traffic across the globe as what was going on, you want to think about this as terms of a real exercise. How would you deal with so much extra data that's being generated for so many additional extra paths? So we simply rolled up to the other tag, to the other CC, and followed along. And we would encourage any of the leaders in any of the different organizations to follow along with a similar type of thinking. So let's talk about data analysis, because that's the other big key piece here. With over 1,500 messages coming in, reports coming in from around the world, how do you deal with all of this data? And there's three ways that you can start to analyze the data. The first is if you are receiving the forms, and this is kind of going beyond where we are with the shakeout, but in general, if you're running your own exercise, your organization is receiving the forms. How do you analyze the data that's coming in? And the first is you can map it directly inside of WinLink, and that's what we were doing. If you watched our live stream during the shakeout, we were doing exactly that. We were live mapping the data as they were coming in using the built-in tools inside of WinLink. They're quite mature in many ways, where you're able to filter data, you're able to identify what's going on, kick out individual screenshots. All the screenshots you saw of the maps that I just showed a little while ago, all of those came directly out of WinLink. The next way is you can take those data, those form data, and you can export all of those form data that came into your WinLink system, and you can hand those off to another operator that's using WinLink, and they can import those same data directly into their copy of WinLink, and then they can map the forms as well. This is a great way of being able to distribute the load on your particular organization. Let's say you're deployed to an EOC, to a hospital, to an event. You want to make sure that you've got one machine where you're receiving all of the traffic that's coming in, but you may have another operator who's really good at data analysis, and you want to be able to hand all of those data off to them. We'll walk through here in just a second how you can do exactly that. The third way of dealing with data analysis is to use external tools, whether that be spreadsheet programs like Excel or Google Sheets, or any of the other different spreadsheet programs that are out there, or even import them into a GIS system or other data systems. You can use live data export tools, which will either export out a snapshot of the data or a live feed that's constantly being updated. And I'm going to show you how to do each of those steps here now. So let's jump over to my PC and we'll walk through a quick little demo of how you export those various different bits of data. So I was one of the people, like, we got to receive a lot of the data that came in, and you saw our live show. You saw how all of that was coming in. And one of the ways to be able to do this initial visual analysis of the data is to simply come up here to the toolbar, click on the little globe icon. The demigods are with me. There we go. And when this comes up, this is the maps and the CSV KML files and forms. Now, files for forms. Now, this one dialog box is really the key to how all of this data analysis works. Let me move the window over here just a little bit so it's a little bit easier to see. As a matter of fact, I'm even going to just move it over here so we can see it. All right, so at the top, you can select which form you want to do these analysis for. So for the DYFI, the form is actually called DYFI map is the one that's there. But if you show up to our show on a regular basis, you'll see us oftentimes map in the WinLink check-ins down here. If you would like to explore these mapping tools yourself, go ahead and use the messages option. That's going to map all of the messages that you have received inside of your WinLink, regardless of if it's coming on a form or not. But so that allows you to kind of play along with this. I'm going to come back up here. I'm going to reselect the DYFI map. Next, you can select the map provider that you want to have the maps displayed. And there are a variety of ones here that you can choose from. I just have Google selected. A lot of people ask oftentimes, like, what happens if the internet's not there? Are the maps really going to work? Well, yeah, they will. What you need to do in order to make that happen is you need to simply do some mapping in your area, zoom in on the areas of the map where you're likely to get the results from. And what'll happen is WinLink is smart enough to cache, to store a copy of those maps where you're going to on a more regular basis. It'll store it locally on your computer. So if you end up in a situation where you don't have access to the internet, your maps will still work. And as a matter of fact, there's even a simple map for no internet option down here at the bottom. So if you're just starting up with a fresh version of WinLink, you don't have access to the internet, and you want to still be able to do this, you can use that option as well. All right, so there's two places. Well, let's start with how to display the map. So I'm going to come up here and just display map, and it brings up the overall map. Now, one of the gotchas when you're in this view, you're not able to interact with other portions of WinLink. You'll see you get the little flashy because this is the frontmost window. So when you're in this mode, you really want to stay in this mode. And we've talked about this quite a bit, but let me give you a quick rundown here. In the upper left is the set filters option. and move this over here so it's a little bit easier to see. And here you can limit the date range. So I have the date range currently limited on this form to show me those that took place right around the shakeout time period. You can enable the map filtering, and then all of these options here. If you want to see which stations reported cracks in their chimney, you can come over here and set equals and click the little drop down menu and say, yeah, these stations all reported they saw cracks in their chimney, and you can say how you would like them identified. So I'm going to say, you know what, let's make those stations orange, and I'm going to say okay, and then we should be able to see. Oops. Actually, let me change a different filter. Instead of cracks in the chimney, let's reset that. Let's say, did any furniture appliances topple? And we'll say 0 for no. And we'll make those orange, and we'll say save. And we'll see if any stations reported, all of these stations around here reported that no furniture toppled over during this exercise. So very quickly, you can quickly see the data that needs to come in. You can save this image as a JPEG. You can print this map. You can even get a summary of these data, and it will go through and do a quick analysis for you of all of the data that came in. And this is just built right into WinLink for a very quick and dirty way of analyzing the data that came in during an exercise. And I'm going to go ahead and close this window. Now, let's say I wanted to hand those data off to another operators. Let's say I wanted to send them over to David or Dan and say, hey, can you go ahead and do the WinLink analysis of this? If you want to hand these specific data off to another operator, what you're going to do is you're going to use this section over here, export and import form data. So this is we're going to export the form data itself. So we'll say export the form data. Come on. And it's going to bring open a small window. You set the date and time range for the data that you want to export out. You set a location where you want that data to export out. In this case, I'm going to export it out to my Google Drive. You give it a name and you hit export data. It will go ahead and kick those data out. What your other operator would do, and notice that's a .txt file. What your other operator would do then, I hit exit, which they could go into their copy of WinLink. They could come over here and hit import form data. They click on that, they browse, they find that file that you just exported, that TXT file. They hit import the file, and then all of the form data that you receive goes into their system, their copy of WinLink, and then they're able to do the mapping just like we just showed you how to do that. So that's the first way of the second way of being able to have somebody else to be able to analyze those data. I'm going to hit cancel now. And the third way of being able to do this is to go through and export the data in a format that can be easily imported into other data analysis tools. The most common way of being able to do that is to use a CSV file. And so what you can do is you can come down here to the bottom where it says generate CSV file. Click on that, and here are some additional controls that you have for this CSV file. So you can, for instance, you can adjust the date format. So if you're using a tool that uses a very specific date format, you can click on this and you can set what that particular date format happens to be. You can limit the date range for the data that you want to be able to export. You can come down here and you can say only include reports corresponding the markers shown on the map, which means you've gone in, you've set some filters on the map, and now it's going to pull just those data out and it's going to extract them for you. You can have this checkbox here. This is so cool. This is generate new CSV file when reports are received. Now, if you take, for instance, let's say you're at an EOC or you're in your communications trailer, you have your own little local internal network that's set up. You can take and you can have this exported CSV file. You can browse and put that on a shared drive somewhere, whether it be locally shared on your network, put it into a cloud storage space. And when you generate the CSV file, if new additional reports come in, WinLink is going to automatically kick out a new copy of that CSV file, put it in the new location. So your other operators that are doing the data analysis always have the latest data to be able to access and update their information, update their maps from. It's absolutely incredible how well this really does work. And all you have to do is hit that generate CSV file. When you do that, what's going to happen is your data is going to be able to be imported. And what I'd like to do briefly here before I go into anything else, let me drop out of my slideshow for a second. And I'm going to go bring up 2 Excel spreadsheets. And we'll jump over here. So this first Excel spreadsheet, what I did here was I took the export of the form data and I exported all of those data out, and then I imported them directly into Excel here. And as you can see, the data, when it comes in from the form export, looks really messy. And the reason is these data are not designed to be used in a regular external analysis tool. These data are all tagged specifically so that they will come directly into WinLink itself and be able to be read with all of the correct fields and so forth. If I open up this Excel spreadsheet, though, this Excel spreadsheet is showing that CSV export, that generate CSV file, which is right at the bottom of the maps window when it first comes up. And here you can see all I did was take that CSV file, I dropped it on Excel, and Excel automatically opened it up, and it was able to quickly parse all of the data. It has a header field here. It has all of the individual bits of data that you may want to have. It's got all the lat long data that's in here, the bearing data for where you're at, the intensity, all of the data that got analyzed or got extracted from all of those forms. Here you can see that exercise ID, and these really do vary all over the place. Most of them, for the most part, most people were able to get the right one, but there was quite a bit of variation that was in here. And so that's kind of a quick look at some of these ways to get the data out of your system. What I'd like to do now is I'd like to kick it over to David and have David go through a little more detail as to some of the other analysis that he's been working on with these data. So David, let me kick it over to you.
All right, Chris, thanks so much. I'm going to share my screen here and we'll just jump right into it. So, obviously Chris has showed you let's see, didn't work. Can you see me now? There you go. Okay, well, obviously, Chris showed you the spreadsheet. I'm not going to dive into that too much, other than there's a lot of data in here. And really, the big question is, what do you want to show and how do you want to show it? So what's valuable about the data? And you need to think about what's valuable about the data, not only for yourself, but who's it valuable for? If you're doing it for your internal group, you might have a different interest or need or meaning from the data as opposed to for your served agency or your county, state, or other organization. So you really need to step back and think about what is it that you want to show? What is it that they want to see? What's going to be meaningful? And as Chris talked about before, you need to talk and think about what is the quality of your data, because that can vary greatly. So just talking about data, and I dove into the data a little bit because I do a little data analytics for a living. And I thought, well, what's interesting about this? What did the USGS want to know? Well, some of the things they wanted to know was what were the responses, and they want to know how many, if they could ask people to get, over a 5 on the Mercalli scale, what were they going to get? But one of the questions that goes into the form is, how did you respond? Right. And we had 1,532 responses, as Chris mentioned, that came into our database that were part of the response that we got. And how did people respond? Well, 1,109 ducked and cover. That's what they want you to do. That's awesome. That is the exact right answer. 120 people took no action. And I guess, you know what, if this is a drill, if it's an exercise, maybe that's the right thing. But 107 people went to the doorway. 46 people ran outside. Do not do that, my friends. And you can go look at a lot of resources, a lot of websites to show the reasons why you don't do that. And you can watch some videos on YouTube about the running outside part. But there's some really good data there. There's really good data that the USGS might be able to use, your county might be able to use to be able to say, hey, we need to do some education in the area because 10% of our respondents did the thing that we're asked them not to do time and time again. And that could be dangerous because that could be, in a city of 100,000, if 10% of your people do the wrong thing. That's a lot of people. It's 10,000 people you might have to treat because they ran outside and they got crushed, or they went in the doorway. And it used to be, I know when I was a kid, that was one of the things that they said that they wanted to do, but they say don't do that anymore. So think about what's in there, and that's some data to glean out of the information. Here's just a kind of a breakdown about what the respondents were across the bottom. You see, these are the responses based on the Mercalli scale. And again, remember, they wanted folks to report 5 or higher. And if you look at the data here, we had a pretty good response around that. And there were folks that ended up lower than that, but a lot of it has to do with what you observed and how you reported it. So if you reported it as not being so violent, or maybe you didn't go through and check information about appliances moving or pictures moving, it may have moved you down the scale a little bit. And then remember too, as amateur radio operators trying to report stuff from the donut hole, at the end, after you fill out your did you feel it form, after you say submit the data, you get a little pop-up screen in the web browser and it says, hey, this is the Mercalli scale that you're reporting, right? If it's not what you wanted it to be, you can bail on it. You can cancel the message you were going to send, and you can go through the steps again and bring it up a little bit in the future. If you're doing an exercise, that might make sense. So we get a higher number of percentages in the way they wanted it presented. Now, this is a great way to show the data, but there's other ways that people show data. And I see this all the time in the business world. Again, this is at the bottom, and again, this kind of breaks it down, but this is a pie chart of the same exact data. Is this a useful way to present the data? I don't know. This might not speak to me because it's kind of all over the place. So think about not only the data that you're going to present, but how you show the data. Sure, this shows that a large number of it did hit the 5, but it's hard to tell where the problems were in the other area. Some of these are above and some of these are below, and just think about the data and how you present it. I did a word map. Chris talked about the comment section. In the comment section, we asked folks to give us some information. It gives you an opportunity to put words in there to say whatever it is, your affiliation, your group. I know early on when they started doing this, they wanted you to put, reported via amateur radio or WinLink. And this is kind of the map of the words that we received. And of the 1,500 responses, you can see I put a little chart up on the right. 309 folks put Aries. And this isn't only Aries, but I just pulled a word count out from the breakdown. 301 had county in theirs. There were 221 that was VARA, 109 that were VARA and HF, 103 from WinLink, and only 40 people put that they were participating in the WaveTalkers group in those comments. And you can see with the word map there, and the word map basically works. The bigger the word, the more that you saw it, and the smaller the word, the lower number of frequencies. But all those things that were items that were reported that came up in the report. And this is a really great way to show data to someone if you're receiving words or reports, to be able to show, hey, the big things here were Aries and County and VARA, and going down from there. Also looking at the quality of data, Chris showed you a little bit of the data in the forum, and I looked at that, at those responses that came in the Excel spreadsheet, and ShakeOut was what we were looking for. And there were a lot of those, but it was all over the place. There were folks that I guess, ShakeOut may not work with your spell checker, and there isn't really a good spell checker for that field, but there were a lot of incomplete words or extra letters or wrong letters or whatever. So you can kind of see there, shaky out, shack out, there's just a lot of data. And when we think about data, it's really important to get good data. And so this is one of those, measure twice, cut once, look at the data you're providing before you push the send button to see what it is that's going to go out there. I'm going to quick show you a word map. There's one other important, actually a couple other important items, and I didn't get to map this out, but I'll just talk to them briefly. Again, of the 1,532 items, pull my camera down for a moment. Of the 1,532 items that were received, Chris had mentioned and talked about the WinLink form version. And it's important to have the most updated WinLink forms because some of them don't report out the same way. You won't be able to get the data in there, and would recommend to anybody restart your WinLink application on a regular basis. And when it asks you that it wants to update the forms or update the application, it's important to do that. And please select that. Now, of the 1,532, the most current version of the Did You Feel It, 1,434 of them were that most current version. 59 was older versions of the version 11, and there were only 12 that were on version 10. So we do a pretty good job, but we could do a little bit better. There was one other data element, and I'm not going to show the data because I don't want to embarrass anybody. But when we talked about doing this activity, we wanted everybody to do this as an exercise, right? This was not a real world event. This was an exercise. And of the 1,532 data elements that we did receive, there was only one person that put that this was a real event. And I'm not going to embarrass him by calling him out. But I think that that is a great testament to how we can get some really good quality data through our process. Okay, so let me pull up my mapping program here, and I want to walk you through. You can obviously map this in WinLink, and you can share those maps out, but there are other ways to do this as well.
Let's share your screen again.
Oh yeah, I should probably do that because I'm looking at it like I was sharing. Thanks for pointing that out, Chris.
Right on, man. Right on. Right there.
So again, you can see it now, right?
Yes, we can.
Awesome. Love that. Okay. Again, here's the data. Here's it exported. There's a lot of good information here. We want to lean into longitude and latitude because we can use that to map. It's handy, it's dandy, and it's useful information. Well, the Google offers My Maps, and you can go to, and I'm going to kind of, again, walk you through this process, mymaps.google.com, and you can see I've created a bunch of maps over time. And we're just going to go through and create a new map here. And as long as you have data and hopefully good data, and you might have to work on it a little bit, you can really quickly and easily create your own map from this and have some information in here. So we're going to say import. We're going to browse to our data, and I have this is the same data I was showing for all the other information. So my mapping data, I'm going to select it. And as long as your data is clean, it's going to look through it. And yeah, I can only do first 50 columns. I'm okay with that. And it's actually going to try to help you out saying, hey, look, I see latitude and longitude. Is that what you want? Absolutely. I love that. And then it wants to have some title. So the title marker, I'm going to select from because I know from is your call signs. And I'm going to just say finish. And that's really all it takes if you have good, clean data to get yourself a really quick, nice looking map. And, similar to the stuff that Chris showed that was out of the WinLink system, but you can take this externally. And if you're handy with your tools and you have access to like a pop-up screen in your EOC, you can embed this website somewhere. You can feed the data on a regular basis and it'll update itself automatically. And again, all of these items have the data along with it. Now I didn't clean it up a ton because I just wanted to show you how to do it, but you can see most of the form data, again, up to those first 50 columns came along with this information. You can make changes to this. You can color code them based on different things. I just wanted to give you an idea how to start this off. I didn't want to go into too much, but we could do a whole session on how I could, change the colors of these based on the Mercalli scale, zoom into certain areas. So again, you could see, what did it look like, in our Southern California, and I hate to be Southern California centric, but that's where I live. And, get some good data here, and to the point where I could drill into, that's my neighbor Norm, but in here somewhere you could see, I think there's my report, W0DHG, right? And we could go over here, and I know Chris was in the harbor there somewhere, and, I think there's, oh, no, that's not him. It's a friend of his. But in the marina there somewhere, Chris was reporting in. Nope, that's not him either. Anyhow, a lot of power in this. So I think that's it of stuff that I wanted to show you.
Hey, David, I've got a question.
Yeah, sure.
Chris pointed out the number of folks that had an error in their latitude and longitude and ended up in Africa. How legitimate is it for you as a data processor once you understand the mistake, to correct that mistake?
Well, so, it did occur to me, and I did not correct for these. So if I zoom back out, obviously I have reports in this area. Look, when you present analytics, it's really up to you to be thoughtful about what you're showing in the business world. If this was really meaningful to me and I knew that we had a regular problem, as Chris did, I would have gone and looked at these, and I would have, had a moment to consider KF70 and WCP. Yeah, they're not in Mongolia, right? And most of the rest of these aren't going to be in there either. And as long as you're thoughtful about the process, you can edit data. And you might add a little asterisk to say, the data was reviewed and analyzed for accuracy, and, improvements were made, because it's better to have a good data set and fix the things that can be wrong. Because, again, I work with business systems. Often you may have a report from one system that has a certain number of decimals and some don't, and it creates issue in what's reporting, and you may need to clean it up a little bit.
It really depends on the data that you've got. And as David mentioned, be sure to add a note to that data, add a notes field. And if there are any adjustments that need to be made, go ahead and make those, make the notation as well. Thanks a lot, David.
As long as you're not trying to hide the fact that you're fixing stuff, and you're open and honest about it. And if there's questions about it, it makes sense to change it, you change it.
Draw attention to it. Anytime you do make a change to that, make sure you draw attention to it, and kind of highlight that this is what happened. Be above board with what's going on.
There's lots of ways to make these word maps. I use this worded out. I've used this before for things. It makes it quick and easy. You just dump all the data in there, and it just kind of maps it for you. So lots of good ways to do it. Excel is your friend, and there are other tools as well. If you're Mac centric, Pages will do the same thing. Lots of options out there.
Hey, David, I have one more question for you about the data that you showed there, and the process of being able to map it into Google Maps. You showed that with the ShakeOut data. Does that process work on any of the forms that are collected via WinLink?
Yeah, pretty much any of the forms. And Chris walked you through the show earlier on how to export that CSV. And as long as you're doing the proper export, and I know there's a couple of different versions that you can export, as long as you export it the right way and you look at the data, you can do what we just showed with any of them. The mapping works the same. Any of the data that you're going to, represent or share with a served agency or another organization, if you're filling out WinLink check-ins, or say, for example, and this is a really great example, there's the SITREP report, right? You could easily see driving in an EOC or another organization, a dashboard that you put up of different reports of power out or water out, or electricity or other services that are not available, and it would all work the same. The exports are all the same, and someone who's real handy with Excel, and either pushing to a web page or pushing into PowerPoint to show on a dashboard, you can really set it up so that you drop the data in the folder, and if you're refreshing the data with the same name on a regular basis, and the stuff that you're showing is there and consistent, it can be updated in, I wouldn't say real time, because that's kind of often a hit and ping WinLink to pull data down, but you can do a refresh of data every minute, every 5 minutes, every half an hour, if it's important, depending on the velocity of data coming in, to kind of show what's going on at any given moment.
Awesome. Thank you very much, David. Go ahead.
I have another question. Chris, you sent out to David and I prior to the show that CSV of the data.
Mm-hmm.
I tried to import that into Maps and it didn't work. And I suspect I know why, because that import was looking for a text file, not a CSV.
Yeah,
Is it simply a matter of resaving that as a text file?
So a CSV file really is a text file. So you could literally just change the file extension .txt. Many programs are smart enough to just know that. So not All CSVs are a text file. Not all text files are CSV. CSV just means it's a comma separated file with delimited data that's in there. So all CSVs are text files, but not all text files are CSV. So yeah, in the case of that, you could just simply change the file extension to be able to import that in. Now you should be able to take that CSV file that I exported to you, and that's the same thing that I just showed how to be able to do that. You should be able to take that and just drop it into, say, Excel, drop it on Google Sheets. What's the VisiCalc, I think, is the one that you use, is the spreadsheet program. You should be able to just drop it on that, and it should automatically just import and parse the data out. If it doesn't, then you can always go up to the file menu on a spreadsheet program and do file import, select that CSV file, and then it'll walk you through a little wizard to be able to import those data in, and then you can oftentimes work with it. LibreOffice, thank you, LibreOffice.
Yeah,
So.
it opened fine in Excel, which I have on my laptop, but when I tried to import it into the mapping, it wouldn't work. And I suspected that's what the problem was, but I didn't have time to play with it.
The earlier
Right.
data dump that we received, the stuff that came kind of raw from the mothership or wherever it came from, it had a bunch of different separations. That was actually pipe separated. And then in the data fields, there were colon, comma, and space separations also based on field, because that file that came out was really set up for a database and like the WinLink database backend, which worked really well, which is the data that they wanted to see. But without understanding how all of those different fields interacted, the first table, I got it working, but it took me, do an export from pipe to comma separated, and then look at the commas, and then do the comma separation, and I'll look at the colons and do the colon separation. And I'm, used to working with disparate data sets and having to do that all the time. If you're not familiar with it, I could imagine pulling out what little hair I had left trying to make that work.
And so just to be clear, when we're talking about those initial challenges, those were the data set that, had we simply just grabbed that data and imported it back into WinLink, boom, all the mapping would have worked, and we would have been then able to export it into the proper CSV file that I just showed you how to walk through doing that. So it really, the data was all there. It's how it's all marked up, and these are the things that you got to kind of be aware of as you're working through all of this information. So
yeah, and I had to do some work with the data for some of the elements, like the Mercalli scale reporting. There were a bunch of them that was blank, right? And or had like errant data in there, and I'm not sure how the errant data got in there. But so before I mapped it, I had to go in and select anything that wasn't the stuff that I wanted, and either just blank those fields out or mark them as zeros. And again, when you are working with data sets and you're doing analytics and doing reports and stuff, it's very common to have to like do just a little bit of massaging of data, and you just call it out, Hey, Chris, somebody asked, is this data set available? Is this something
we've had a lot of people asking that. It's not our data to be able to share, so we would direct you to the WinLink website to be able to find out if they are sharing the data, but it is not our data to share. That's another bit of responsible data use, is knowing who is the owner of the data and how that data can and cannot be shared. So we're showing you, we're not going into how, we're not going to be able to share those data because they don't belong to us to be able to do that. So let me jump back over, because I want to cover a couple of other things. We talked about the strengths, some of the weaknesses. Let's talk about a couple of the threats that occurred during this exercise, at least from our visibility standpoint of what we experienced. And this is what I like to call the data collection challenge. When we start thinking about what was this challenge, it really comes down to both bandwidth and speed. Now, in in modern times here, we're used to really fast internet connections, moving large amounts of data. And in the particular situation where we were using WinLink and I was receiving in real time these data that were coming in, there is a real amount of time that it takes to both receive a WinLink message and to also transmit a WinLink message. And when you're talking about, on a one-to-one basis where you're an individual operator and you're out in the field, this is a relatively minor impact on that individual. So for the most part, those 1,500 plus reports that came in, there was probably very little other than maybe waiting to find an open frequency. I know when I was doing some checking around to a lot of the both HF and VHF gateways that I had access to, I noticed many of them were busy throughout the day passing traffic. And so it may just be a matter of if you're on a local net, working through your net control operator as to when to send your traffic, having a nice coordinated effort for doing that, or simply just waiting for that open spot to be able to send in your field report, whether it be a field situation report, a DYFI, or what have you. The real challenge ends up being the potential impact on your agency having jurisdiction. This might be your EOC. It might be whatever your state agency or your local agency that you're working with, the ones who are actually collecting all of those data. And I'm going to walk through a little demo as to how I dealt with that problem, because it was a real issue for me to be able to, even on a fast gigabit connection here at the house, to be able to receive all of those data throughout the day. I had to make some specific adjustments into my WinLink system in order to be able to receive on a regular basis all of these data. So again, right now we're just talking about your agencies having jurisdiction and some strategies that they may want to use in order to try and mitigate the challenges that they may have. And if you're a leader within your MCOM organization, whether it be your local ARES team, an ACS, an OXCOM team, a RACES team, or what have you, these are also strategies that you may want to consider implementing for future exercises or incidents that you get called out. And the first one is to have a dedicated receive station. One of the first things that I found was, it's no surprise, I use a Microsoft Surface here as my primary radio station to be able to do WinLink and all of this traffic. I found my station, especially when I was trying to do the live show, being a real challenge to constantly be receiving the reports and be demonstrating, walking through, filling out the form. It ended up taking up a little more system resources than I was expecting because of the sheer volume of traffic that was coming in. It was several a minute that were coming in on a regular basis. So by splitting that load off and having a dedicated station that's just receiving all of those reports would free up the flexibility for your other operators to be able to do things like send additional reports, send responses, engage with the operators that are out in the field, provide the outbound communication that's needed. So this is, again, just an option, a thought for somebody to have a dedicated receive WinLink station. For that dedicated receive WinLink station, we strongly suggest using Telnet for that receive channel. And this Telnet connection should be on the fastest connection that you possibly have to the CMS. Now, that may be an internet connection. If we're talking about the agencies having jurisdiction, if we're talking about an EOC, most of them have multiple layers of redundant internet capabilities set up. It may have their primary internet, maybe a backup line. They may have cellular backup lines, satellite backup lines, mesh connections, things that are at the agency level, normal operating sorts of equipment, where as an individual ham out in the field, oftentimes we may not have the luxury of having all of these additional layers of additional backups available. So again, we're just talking about that agency level of how you maybe want to deal with it. Having that dedicated receive station plugged into your fastest possible connection out to the CMS or the common message server is really key to making that work. The next one is called auto polling, and this is a feature inside of the Telnet functionality inside of WinLink. And I'm going to step you through here in just a second how you set that up and why you would want to set that up and how you'd want to make that work. Basically, in a nutshell, the Telnet functionality has this option where you can set it to automatically go out, poll out over to the CMS, grab new messages, and pull them down without any user interaction. And I'm going to show you the couple of settings that you would need to be able to do this. Now, it is really important to note, as an individual ham or an individual operator out in the field, this is not the thing that you would want to be doing. You do not want to set your station to be auto polling, especially if you're using RF, because if you're using RF and your system is set to auto poll, it's going to constantly be trying to use up all of the bandwidth that all of your other operators are going to be using. So you definitely would not want to set this if you're an individual operator. Again, this is just for an agency sort of setup. And the last one is having a separate station that's set up for your RF transmit and receive. Now, this goes along with that, what I was kind of talking about, where you've got this dedicated station that's just receiving all of these reports. If you're set up at an agency, they're on that fast connection, the machine is kind of crunching away. I'll show you a model of what this would look like. And then have a separate station that if you're just doing RF communication, maybe you're set up to do peer-to-peer. Maybe you're set up to just have that out of area connection where you're maybe not able to reach something else, but having a separate station for that. So let me pull me down here, and I want to do a little walkthrough of what this possibly could look like. So here we've got the WinLink CMS, or the common message system. I've got it noted as this star because it is a star network. Any station can connect into any other, and all of the stations connected to that have access to it. So here's that primary receive Telnet station. This is again at your agency, at your EOC, and it's running Telnet. It's constantly going in. It's polling for all of the data. It's your primary data ingest. It's got a really fast, it's whatever your fastest connection to the CMS happens to be. It's auto polling. It's using that auto CSV generation feature that I just showed you a little while ago. And it's the primary data sharing tool within that local network that's set up at your agency. The next station that I've got noted here is a shares RF TX RX station. And this is going to be your backup RF data ingest station. If there, for some reason, you burn through all of the different connections you've got, if you've got a share station that's connected via RF onto the shares network, that would be your next best station for doing your data ingest. Again, it's going to be going via RF, which means it's going to greatly slow down. Even though shares is quite a bit faster, it's not going to be as fast as what an internet connected machine is going to be. Another benefit that you're going to have with a share station there is the ability for encrypted data or data that needs to be kept private, having a channel for that information to be able to go through. Let's say you've got within the area that you're working within the disaster, you've got hospitals that need to transmit secure information. That could be done via RF shares through an encrypted channel. Think of this essentially as your agency superhighway for being able to provide your communications back and forth and around. It's also a place for peer-to-peer digital comms that is outside of the primary internet connection. So let's say you have a station, you have a location within your area that you're trying to focus on, and they don't have a connection to the internet. They would want to be using some probably peer-to-peer connection directly to that share station that's there at the EOC or at the agency to provide that data. And so you want as clean of a pipeline as you can get for those data to be able to come in. The other station, and this could be the same station, having a ham station, and that the operator could be able to go back and forth. Notice I also have an operator located at each of the different RF stations, whereas the primary telnet station, once it's set up, it can essentially run without an operator sitting there the entire time, just as somebody to kind of keep an eye on what's going on. That ham station can be primarily for peer-to-peer RF data ingest. And this is your tactical RF comms, your backup RF comms as well. All of those ham operators that are out in the field that are providing real-time on-the-ground data, if they're not able to reach a CMS or another gateway, they may need to send that traffic directly into you. And having a channel that's set up, dedicated for that, would be a really nice way to be able to handle that sort of a setup. So is this a requirement? No, it's not a requirement, but what we experienced, where we were receiving so many messages throughout the day at a pretty much a constant rate, it had my station, which in this case was modeled after this primary receive station. My station was pretty much in continuous use all day long, as it was constantly polling, getting new messages, downloading them as they were coming in. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to give you a quick demo as to how I did the setup to make my station to be able to operate as well as I could. So first of all, when you're going to, so again, we're in the mindset that we're at the EOC, we're at our agency having jurisdiction, and we need to have our station set up to constantly be receiving all of these reports. What you're going to do is you're going to come up here to the settings section. You're going to start with your WinLink Express setup, the very top option. You're going to click on that, and you're going to come down here, and you're going to uncheck the box here for display list of pending incoming messages to download. Now, anytime you're an individual operator out in the field, especially if you're operating via RF, you want to make sure that this option here is checked, because you only want to be able to receive the messages that are absolutely necessary during that activation, during that situation. So you want to get that pre-list so you're not tying up all of the bandwidth. And if you're in the situation where you're the agency having jurisdiction, you're the EOC, you want to uncheck this option so that it just downloads all of the messages that are coming in for your particular tactical call sign. So that's where you would have the tactical call sign that's receiving all of the information. Here in this case, WaveTalkers is the one that I would be receiving all of the traffic under, and you just hit the update button. So that sets up your copy of WinLink to be able to easily receive a large flood of messages. Then what you want to do is you want to go up here to the open session where it says Telnet WinLink. Click the drop down there. Make sure you're set on Telnet WinLink. Click on that and hit the open session button. Now, normally we just hit the start button and it downloads whatever messages that are here. And you can see here on the top, you may or may not have ever noticed this. It says time to next auto connect equals disabled. Well, how the heck do I enable that? Well, what you do is you come over here to the settings button, click on settings, and this is the Telnet properties for settings. You can come down here for Telnet session auto connect time, click the drop down for that, and you can set some sort of regular polling feature for this particular exercise. If you're on an exercise or an incident that's getting a ton of traffic that's coming in from the field, your high speed connection, your best connected machine is going to want to set to automatic. And for background, automatic background monitoring and message uploading. So you can hit that, and you can also say automatic. Now, if you want this to instantly send out any messages that are generated off of this machine, you can check this box, and then any new messages that go into the outbox will automatically, boom, go out as soon as they hit that outbox. It's kind of the format of a normal email system that we would use on a daily basis. For this exercise, though, when I was doing the demos for our show, I wanted to be able to show the whole process, and I wanted to make sure that my traffic was going out another method. So I unchecked this option here. So I had to go ahead and poll if there were messages to go out, but I wanted to manually be able to manage that process. So we'll just say update here, and you see now it says time to next auto connect, and it just goes into a starting sequence, and it starts off at about a 15-minute polling. I can hit start now, and it'll go ahead and it'll do the poll. And you'll notice if I hit start just like 1 or 2 more times. Eventually what'll start to happen is this time to auto connect will start to adjust. And every time it starts getting messages, it'll make that time shorter and shorter and shorter until it's just on a continuous basis for being able to download the next message as soon as one is out there and available. Now, it's real important after the exercise, after the incident is complete for this station, that you're going to go back into your settings and you're going to turn both of these features off. You're going to turn this back to disabled and back to disabled, because otherwise your station is going to be constantly polling the CMS and adding more updated traffic. So I'll go ahead and hit update. And that's set to that mode. I'm going to close that. I'm also going to go back here to my settings and I'm going to reset my WinLink Express setup. And I'm going to check the box here for display the list of the pending incoming messages. And I'll hit update. Now, anytime I do check my messages at this point, now, if there's a new message, it will automatically give me a pop-up, give me a list of all those messages that it's about to download, and then give me the option to either download them now or delay that process, so I can save on the bandwidth that's available to everyone else. So now we've talked about many of the strengths and the weaknesses and some of the threats. Let's talk about some of the opportunities that we saw from the ShakeOut 2023 exercise. And the first is more training within your organization, within your groups as individual hams, to go out, do more practice with WinLink every single week. We host and we do a check-in where we have people send in their WinLink check-in every single week to us. And then we go back and we show how to map that, and we show how that data can be sorted and worked with. So every week we're trying to increase the opportunities for training. There are also a lot of other WinLink, they call them WinLink Wednesdays. They go by a bunch of different names that are out there for everyone to participate and have more training for your particular group using WinLink, practicing sending traffic via RF, sending traffic via other different modes as well. The next opportunity that we saw was refinements overall. We've put together a general list that we're going to send on to the WinLink development team of some of the real specific details of things that kind of we found kind of slowed us down a little bit, that we could maybe be a little more efficient when we were trying to push some of the traffic and move the traffic around. And so continue to both refine and make note about what worked well, what didn't work well, what were the strengths of what you did, what were the weaknesses, what are some of the threats to your particular organization that you ran into, and come up with a defined plan on how to better mitigate those, and run some more tests and figure out did those adjustments make a difference to you and your organization. And the last opportunity that we came up with was integrations, having more ways of creating better integrations of the data that comes in, of how you can integrate your operators within the field, integrate the data coming in from your operators into your local EOC, your local agencies, whatever those groups happen to be, figuring out ways that you and your group can be better plugged in overall into the overall structure of using WinLink and of doing a lot of doing support for your local communities. And so that's what we had there. I want to quickly jump back over to my PC here and do one more quick check of any of the check-ins that have come in. So if you haven't had a chance to send in your WinLink check-in, go ahead and do that. If you're finding the information we've presented today helpful, be sure to go onto our YouTube channel, like the video, leave us a comment, let us know what you thought about this. Subscribe if you're not already subscribed. If you really found the information helpful, consider going on to wavetalkers.com and use that buy us a coffee link to help support what we're doing here on WaveTalkers. It really makes a huge difference, and we thank all of you who are supporters of this channel and of what we're doing here at WaveTalkers. So let me do one more quick check here to see if any other check-ins have come in, and it looks like we've gotten them all. We'll do one more. make sure we've got them, and we'll go ahead and close that. I'm going to click on the little globe icon here so we can map out the new check-ins that have come in. I'm going to click the drop-down menu here, and we're going to go to the WinLink check-in V5. That's going to list all of those out. I'm going to hit the display map option. I'm going to check real quick on my filters because I've been doing a lot of filtering of things. So I want to make sure that I'm set to the current 24 hours. And yes, it looks like I am. I'm going to hit save for that. Oops, come on. And let me go ahead and zoom out. We're going to zoom all the way out, get a global view of the world here. And we'll go ahead and blow that out to full screen. And let's see where we got some check-ins coming in. It looks like we've got Whiskey Hotel 6, Foxtrot Bravo Papa joining us from Hawaii. And K6COB, either you are on a plane right now, you're on a boat, or there's a problem with your location, because I'm pretty sure you live in Southern California. We know who you are. Thanks a lot for checking in. This looks like Terry down in New Zealand, Z01HOG. Thanks a lot for joining us. We also have station Sierra Mike 7, Yankee Tango November, joining us here in Northern Europe. And this looks like Franz joining us, Oscar Echo 3, Foxtrot Quebec uniform from Austria. Thanks a lot for joining us today, Franz. Let me go ahead and zoom in a little bit, a couple of times. I'm going to hold down the right mouse button as I click and zoom to be able to drag over to this location. Here we've got Victor Echo 3 Yankee X-Ray joining us from north of the border in Canada. And then we're going to roll over a lot of these other stations so that everyone can see that we did get your check-in, that it did come in. And big thanks to all of you who did join us. There you are, Lloyd. See you kind of tucked in under that other station right there. Station here in looks like in the Atlanta area. Stations across Texas. Hey, King, good to see you joining us. Station here in Kansas and Iowa, up here in Chicago and Southern Illinois. Station here in Colorado, Ohio. It looks like Dave joining us. Let me zoom in a little bit on the Pacific Northwest. And again, right click and drag. It really is a quiz every week to remind everybody how you move this map around just a little bit, because it's very easy to forget that you got to right click in order to drag that to pan that map around. Hey, Bill, thanks for joining us. There's a grouping of operators here in the Portland area. Thanks for joining us here on WaveTalkers this week. Let me go ahead and pan down here to Southern California and the Southwest a little bit. Station here in Utah and Southern Nevada, and out here in the Death Valley area. Roll on down the Piedmont area here in Sacramento, and down on into the Bay Area to all of those stations, and a few of our stations down here in the Los Angeles area joining us. Hey, Craig, good to see you as well. Let me go ahead and bring myself back up to the main screen and bring the guys back up on screen. And we'll go around for any final thoughts that folks have. Dan, let's start with you today. Any final thoughts from today's episode and from ShakeOut in general? You're on mute still. Nope, we'll come back to you. David, any closing thoughts from you?
We'll get Dan unmuted soon. I was so happy to see all the data we got. I was so happy to see all the participation. It warms my heart to get all the good feedback, all the notes that we get about how this is helping people out. We're really happy to be able to show some data-driven stuff and to give people something to think about. What do you show? How do you show it? When do you show it? Why do you show it? And be thinking about that when you talk to the people that you work with about what's important to them. When you do exercises, ask them what they're testing. Because if you know what they're testing, then you know what you're being measured against. And if you know that, then you can look at what you're reporting back or what kind of information you're collecting and making sure that it's the right stuff, and then how to take it, turn it around and show it to people that's in a way so it's meaningful for them and meaningful for you, so that you understand the value that you're bringing, and test it and play with it and make sure it works.
Thanks, David. Dan, are we
We are fixed.
Woohoo!
I'm not a data guy, so this was mostly a learning experience for me today. Real interesting. And I did, like David, was really encouraged by the participation on Thursday. My ACS group, I think we had 15 DYFI reports filed by our members. Certainly not where I'd like it to be, but considering our past participation, I was pretty happy with that. And so I think great exercise, and we can only do better next year.
For me, I was really thrilled to see all of the participation that came in from a global audience. I was really excited to learn a whole lot myself about WinLink and how to manage the data that was coming in. I think I did an okay job with being able to do that. Certainly lots of room for improvement. But most of all, just the overall map of seeing this global audience that connected via WinLink, sent in their traffic, really just absolutely blew me away. I'm trying to get back on the screen. Here we go. So I can just switch back over to this. This map really just speaks for itself of the power of WinLink, the operators from around the world who were able to participate in this year's ShakeOut, all via WinLink. And again, this is just a subset of everyone who participated in WinLink in ShakeOut. These are just the folks who participated via WinLink at this point. So with that, next Saturday, if you're in the Southern California area, certainly David and I will be down at the Hamtastic event in San Diego on Saturday morning. Event runs, it's on Fiesta Island. It runs from 8 a.m. Pacific until about 1 p.m. Pacific. We're going to be with the Cal OES folks that are down there. If you're in the Southern California area, do stop by and say hi. Find us. We'll be setting up. We'll be sending some WinLink traffic. We will be on the air as well, so keep an eye out for us. I don't know which bands will be on or how much audio voice operating we'll be doing. I know we'll be doing some WinLink traffic, sending that around. So keep an eye out for us if you're going to be at Hamtastic in San Diego area. Again, that's Fiesta Island. 8 o'clock in the morning is the start time on that. It ends at about 1 p.m. And then we'll do the show the next day. So we're going to drive down to San Diego in the morning, and then we'll be back up here for another show. Keep an eye out on your email. If you'd like to join us in our live audience here at any point, be sure to go onto wavetalkers.com. At the bottom of every page is a join us link. You can fill that out, join our mailing list, and we'll send you the link to join us here live in the Zoom. If you're joining us on YouTube, thanks a lot for joining us. Be sure to like and leave us a comment. Let us know what you think there on the show. We really appreciate the engagement. It certainly helps. And with that, I think we'll say 7-3 to everyone who's joining. If you're here inside of the Zoom, hang around for the after party where we're going to unmute the mics and take your questions. So thanks a lot for joining, everyone. 7-3.